All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Big Ben Fishing Report.
We're here.
Yeah, Greg and I have been on the water today.
It was exciting, but
And they don't want to talk about it.
no, there's
That's
not
the
much, not much to talk
We're
about.
at a podcast.
At least
Two
today.
two that were on the water today, and they have nothing to talk about. They have nothing to say about it.
I can tell you, earlier in the week was really good.
Yeah, the front, and we said it last time too. You get these late fronts through, especially once the change has actually started. You know, the water's warmed up, the fish have moved out of the creeks, and the bait's starting to show, and then you get this front come through, and it just knocks everything back, and I get just kind of just stuns everything, and just hits the brakes.
Well, the water temps went from the mid 70s to 52
Mm-hmm.
Today was 52.
yesterday.
Yesterday.
Yesterday was
Okay.
52.
Yeah, I seen mid 60s today's.
So that's 30.
Yeah, it was low to mid 60s.
Yeah, when I got into a couple creeks and it got up to like 66, 67, but that was in the creeks on low tide.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was chilly, and that's really the only place I've seen. I mean, I've seen some fish moving around the bars and stuff, some redfish and stuff on the outside, on the oyster bars and the rock and everything. But I mean, there was nothing.
They weren't
consistent. Yeah, you couldn't get them to eat anything. I mean, there wasn't even many pinfish out there. I was telling Pat earlier, the only time I really got to a point where, they were eating, we had kids on the boat today, so we had shrimp, where they were eating the shrimp was when I got into the creeks.
Yeah.
Then it became an issue. But on the outside, there wasn't hardly any pinfish out there at all.
No.
So.
Did catch a nice trout. On your boat caught a nice trout.
And a flounder.
And a flounder, yeah.
So the other day we caught a sheephead with them. So they caught the whole gamut. Obviously we caught some redfish, both boats, but
yeah,
it wasn't what it should have been for March 19th. I would have expected a little more.
And that water temp was just getting right for top water. And I mean, just about the time it was fixing to bust wide open top water bite, bam, cold front.
Well, I think the thing for everybody to look for now is, obviously you go fishing when you go fishing, but this time of year especially, I always look for, when's the air temp gonna hit 80 again? You're gonna get some humidity back in the air, and then you get that south wind. And that's the day. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're doing, that wind turns out of the south, you get 70 to 80% humidity coming in, and an 80-degree temperature. I mean, those fish they're going to eat. I mean, you got to have a little bit of tide, but even the tides don't affect it as much when you get those conditions this time of year. Coming off of cool nights, starts warming up, that air's moist out of the south, and they're ready to go.
Yeah, it's like I said, it was good. We had a little tease.
Yeah.
And then reality set in again.
But it's probably a good thing, because I mean, this 4 days that we've had now, probably going to have, tomorrow's probably still going to be a little tough, I would imagine. I think the wind's still supposed to blow out of the north tomorrow.
Saturday's going to be tough.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't looked.
Don't go on Saturday. It's going to be tough. Stay in the turkey woods.
But this 4 or 5 days here that we get now could prolong our spring, another 2 weeks.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because when it warmed up, it got hot fast.
Yeah.
And that water temp was just climbing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we were on the verge of going from winter to summer.
Yeah. Yeah. And with the redfish and trout, it doesn't make a lot of big difference. The trout, it does as to where they are. The reds and stuff, once they're out, they're kind of, they're not stationary, but they don't roam a whole lot. But the trout, it keeps them in. I think it keeps your bigger trout around a little longer.
Yeah.
As far as being inshore, where you can.
Well, the spawn is. I mean, they're going into spawn, and they're pre-spawn in April, and then they're spawn in May, June, July. So the egg production just shuts back down. I mean, they quit get coming up, and it skips a couple of moons. Is what it does. It causes them to skip a couple of moons because they can spawn in April, early April, but it'll be late April.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, so it gives you a little bit of more time at
Well,
the end of spring.
The spawn is more susceptible too because if the water worms quickly, they'll lay eggs when they haven't gotten as many eggs as they're going to as they could, their capacity, and so you don't have as good a F1 class of fish if it warms up quickly. That's true in any freshwater or saltwater. So the slower, the longer the pre-spawn, the healthier the eggs and the fish are laying them.
Yep.
So I'm hoping it'll draw out a little bit.
Yeah, and I think like going into this weekend, I think tomorrow's going to be going to be tough.
Yeah.
I think Saturday's going to be slower.
Well, it's
Yeah.
supposed to be 42 in the morning, but then 52 the next day. So we're going to have 10 less degrees of cold drop back. And then it's supposed to be 84, 85 Sunday.
Yeah,
I think
Air temperature.
Sunday will probably be the
be
day
the day that
when it starts
coming.
turning around.
Yeah, and like I said, watch for that wind and watch for your humidity to start coming up. I've always noticed, in the spring like that, when you get out there, if it feels like winter, the bite's always off. If it feels like summer, which is usually the difference between a north wind and a south wind.
Yeah.
Typically, but yeah, this you can almost smell it in the air. You smell that spring. You smell all the orange. Well, we don't have orange blossoms anymore, but you can smell all the plants and everything like that.
I can feel all the pollen. I can feel it.
Yeah, and that's that's when the bite turns on. And like I said, it definitely shut down this week.
It'll be. I would say mid next week's going to fire up.
Yeah.
Well, the water temperature is important, but the bait showing up.
Yeah.
You said you saw some bait today. Greg, talk about that.
Well, I saw them, like I was saying earlier. I didn't see them on the flat as much, but around the mouths of the creeks where the water was warmer, I saw a lot of pinfish.
Oh, okay.
And they weren't just out across the flat. You'd see them. There was a couple creeks I went to that were close that I just idled along, and I saw a few, but we were within 100 yards of the creeks.
Right.
And when we were
But
drifting,
even we're not seeing the migrating bait.
no, and that's why I said when we were out there where we started, I didn't see any, and I don't think I had any pinfish messing with the shrimp or anything.
Yeah, a buddy of mine, good fisherman, Jonathan Sisson from North Georgia, up there around Gainesville, Georgia. He went and had a limited trout Sunday.
Oh, Sunday was good.
And he caught, he had a 28-inch fish. He sent me a picture of it. It was a really nice trout. But more importantly, when he sent me a picture of the cooler full of fish, he had 2 mackerel laying on top of the trout. So that's a good sign. I showed Greg the picture, and I said,
And then we had cold front.
mackerel had to have something. Well, they didn't go back to Tampa because they were already to Deagle Beach anyway. But anyway, that's what we need to start seeing. And then we'll know, because they had already caught a few cobia down in Steenhatchee. I don't know that anyone's caught one at Keaton, but I think I saw
one short, but
I saw posts for three cobia, 1 keeper out of Steenhatchee. So last year they had them for 2 weeks. What we did, if I remember right,
yeah, well,
close to it.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's right around the corner. It's just itching. They're just itching to come on for us. We'll talk about what you're gonna do now when it breaks.
what I'm going to do,
Yeah, what you gonna throw?
I'm probably going to be throwing the unfair arrowhead, Mirrodine.
Which one? They make 6.
It depends.
It depends.
Most-
folks.
Depends on the
So-
size of the bait.
Yes, but most of the time I'm throwing the 27 MR.
Right, me too.
See,
I can throw it further and catch more fish on it. I think it drops. The drop rate on it is better. The 17 drop rate is pretty slow. It's more for 50-degree water than it is 70. I prefer it. And size hooks. I don't like to catch big fish on little hooks.
But that unfair arrowhead before this cold was on fire. I mean, it was
describe what that is for folks that don't know.
I really don't know how to describe
It's
it.
a suspending bait.
It is. It's,
not
a,
a
it's,
lip
it's
bait,
a suspending bait, has a little rattle in it, and the profile is more like a pinfish. You know,
Yeah.
it's got the
Right.
The shape is definitely more like a pinfish.
As an arrowhead, get it? Arrowhead shape. Yeah.
Yeah.
and the action on it when you twitch it, it kind of rolls on its side. You know, it doesn't, instead of
It's
just
one of those
twitching,
baits that
it's
doesn't really
rolling.
impress you when you look at it, but it, you know, we've all used baits that just you don't think look very good in the water, but just catch fish.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one of those. I mean, you can't, if you were to work it through a pool and work you know, whatever, a Sebile, a Miradine, any of them, you're going to probably pick those over that every time, just because the way it looks in the water and acts.
Well, I think the difference, we talked about this before.
Rattle
I think the rattle is a
Rattle
lot.
helps.
And I think that, you know how when you see a weak or sick pinfish, how they kind of flash like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what that bait does.
Yeah.
I'm hurt.
Yeah. I know a bait that used to work. I used to use a lot of the Sebile stick shads, and they had a little rattle in them too. And that, you know, that bait had really good action, but I think that rattle made a big difference. It wasn't the same as what the Unfair has, where, you know, it's not as loud as a rattle trap, but it's got that same type of chamber, where the Sebile just had the rolling. You just hear the clunk, clunk, clunk,
Clack.
clunk. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that made a difference in that bait. I've been trying to get Eric to do something with a Miradine for a while. Just put a BB in there. I was going to drill a hole and just put a couple in there and fill them in. But it would throw the weight off, I'm sure.
It needs a chamber or it won't talk.
Right.
Now, I can tell you a couple more weeks, you're going to have to pry a top water out of my hand.
Yeah. Well, I got a feeling next week. I mean, even, and as weird as it sounds, I always like, so we're on, you know, well, we're on much bigger tide today in the last couple of days than we should have been. But we have, you know, we're coming off the moon now, and we get into next week when we're on those quarter moons and half moons. I actually like throwing top waters better when there's not a real swift current. You know, I always like, you know, it gives you a chance if you're working bars or working an edge, you can throw it down there and the current's not sweeping it away or sweeping it, you know, across the bar. You
Right.
can work that, you know, you can work that whole bar. And those fish, you know, while they do want current, as long as you got some water moving in the springtime, you know, they're programmed to eat, and that's what they're wanting to do. So I always like doing, you know, I'll use them. I'm like you, I'll throw them 24 hours a day, but I like it when the tides are just a little bit slower and it doesn't pull your, you know, you can work it right where you want it and keep it there.
Well, you know, it's just like, you think about us, if we eat the same thing over and over and over for several months, and all of a sudden, hey, here comes some ballyhoo, or here comes some
Yeah.
greenbacks, white, you know, something different. Yeah.
Well, I always said this: the stimulation of the trout is a competitive factor, regardless of whether they're eating the baits that you see. Because in my 35 years, I'd rather be around ballyhoo than anything, and I've found one ballyhoo and one trout in 35. I've cleaned quite a few trout in 35 years.
But you find the ballyhoo and the trout are there.
Yeah,
Always on.
and they can't catch them. Either they can't catch them or they don't like them. But they're going to be where they are. And I had 7 numbers in my old machines that were about. I had ballyhoo, Whoville, Hootertown, Valley High. I've forgotten those, but anyway, all that was where there were acres and acres of ballyhoo back in the 90s, and you just killed the trout. The trout came out to where that was going on, and I guess they ambushed everybody that was watching the parade. I don't know, because they were there, but they did not eat ballyhoo.
And that doesn't only happen here, that happens everywhere. I can remember fishing down off of, you know, Pasco and Pinellas and finding those giant rafts of ballyhoos and throwing jerk baits to them or running jigs just underneath them. And I mean, it was nonstop, and they were big trout. You would always catch the biggest trout under ballyhoo, always.
Well, it's kind of like we're going into spring, obviously. So that bait starts pushing, and you'll see jacks busting on them. You know, you get up there may be jacks, mackerel busting on them.
Bluefish.
Yeah. But the trout are there.
Yeah.
And then if you let it get down below all that, you're gonna get some redfish.
Yes.
But you got to get below everything else to be.
I got a story for you on this one. Back in ancient times when I was tournament fishing, we were out in Lake Charles, and we're out there, and one of the guys that lived out there, I had helped him at a couple of the tournaments here, and he's like, just give me a call when you get out there. So we get out there, and Lake Charles is famous for big trout, redfish too. But you get out there and you'll see these just flocks of seagulls, and they're just dipping, and all they're doing, they're grabbing the shrimp. The trout and redfish push the shrimp to the top, and they're just picking them right off the top. So he's like, look for them, get out there, and just throw jigs into it. He said, you'll catch redfish. All right. So me and my dad we're running down the middle of the lake. It's a big lake.
Yeah.
Big lake. We're running down, and there's some birds. So we go over to them, and sure enough, he said, they're diving, don't mess with them. He said, but if they're just dipping. So we get over there, and they're dipping down. I was like, cool. So we fired jigs in there. Trout. We must have caught 300 trout that day. All of them, just big trout. So I get home. Friend's name was Eric. I call him up. I'm like, Eric, what'd you do to me? He's like, what do you mean? So I told him what happened and everything, and he just kind of starts laughing. He goes, you using those little, and quarter ounce is a big jig head for most people.
In Florida.
He goes, you using those little bitty quarter ounce jig heads? I'm like, yeah. He goes, go get you some half-ounce jig heads and go back and do it again. So, all right. So we did and got out there. He said, when you cast, he goes, count to 3 and then start working it. And that's exactly what we were doing. We were working them faster, and the trout were all up high. Threw them big jig heads out and let it get beneath them, start working them. We must have caught 100 redfish that day.
Well, I've kind of changed the last couple of years. I always used a lot of 1/8 ounce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we're primarily fishing shallow.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten where I want a quarter or more. I almost never put an 1/8 ounce anymore.
Yeah.
Unless it's like right now when I'm up real shallow.
Yeah. I've always used quarter only because I can feel it better. And that's the only reason. The 1/8 ounce, I'll use 1/8 ounce a lot, but even in the wintertime when we're fishing in the airboats, I'll use a quarter because I can feel it coming through the rocks. As soon as I hit a rock, I'm not setting the hook on it. Where if you use those lighter jigs, you don't feel that rock as much. It just starts getting tight and you set the hook. So I've just, my whole life, I've always, quarter has been the light stuff that I use. And
the thing too, coming up in the next couple of weeks, you're going to be able to speed that presentation.
Mhm.
Probably within the next 3 weeks, you're going to be able to work a bait pretty quick.
yeah. And the other thing with the quarter is you got so much more distance when you're throwing it. And if you are chasing schools of bait or fish are chasing schools of bait around you, you reel that fish in, you can still make a long cast. And if they're feeding on that, then like I said, you're just reeling it through them anyway, letting them eat it. Pat's disagreeing with us. I can feel it.
I didn't say anything.
You didn't have to.
It's a different style.
It is.
Well, I throw a 1/8 on an Assassin's 1/8 may be heavier than that. I mean, it's got the 3 knobs, I call it, on the back of it, or we 3 kings is what I used to call those, the jig head. But I use their quarter in 8 to 12 feet of water, and I can feel it all day. Now, some of my clients get on the boat, they need 3/8 or a 1/2 ounce to be out there in 12 feet of water because they're overdoing it. When I get them to slow down, you gain more strikes. But I throw a 1/8 in what I call, from 4 to 8 feet of water. I'm throwing a 1/8, but I don't do a lot of as much jigging as y'all do in less than 3 feet of water. If I'm in that water, I'm throwing a cork because I'm trying to call that big dog over there, and I don't want a keeper trout. I want my overslot for the day. And so, I'll run a cork and grub, and I'm throwing a 1/16. And I'm doing that because of the principle of 90% of the people that come to Keaton Beach throw a gulp shrimp on a 1/4 ounce jig head on a cork. The problem with that is that the jig drops this fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to call that a 1/4 of a second. Well, a 1/16 ounce is 1/4 of, or 1/4, I'm going to say for people who don't understand math, it is 1/4 of the weight of a 1/4 ounce jig. So you get 4 times the wave when you pop the cork for it to drop.
Well,
on,
now,
on a cork.
I'm different on a cork. I don't.
Okay.
Most of the time, I don't run away.
But
I
I'm
understand.
just talking about corks because I'm not throwing the unweighted in less than 3 feet of water anyway. I know I've got a cork on. So that's the difference in my change. And then I'm waiting on the fish. Y'all are starting in water that I stop in. And so because of your draft, and my Parker's just not set up for that. So it is a different fishery. I've watched though, and I got on the airboat and next to Greg, and I was throwing a 1/16, and he was throwing a 1/4 ounce jig, and he caught about 2 to 1 for they weren't all keeper reds, but they were as far as fish because he was staying down in the bottom of those pools. And I understand that. I'm just more of a touchy feely when it comes to shallow water,
Mhm.
which is what I'm used to doing. And so from my bass fishing days, the finesse of that thing being light, if anything breathes on, I know what it is, but I'm not staying in contact. But you prefer reds and you catch more reds because of the way
The way
you
we
fish.
fish.
You
Yeah,
fish
without
for
a
the
doubt.
reds.
And if I need to slow it down, that jig head, something that I know Kenny does it too. Like when you're throwing a lighter jig head and you're popping it, making it come up and then flutter back down, you're letting it up and then letting it fall on its own because the weight is light. When I pop it up, I'm actually lowering it back down.
Right.
Yeah,
That's the
and
way.
it's just a technique and
Well,
it's
I
a way
teach
we've
that. I
learned.
teach that from my blackfish fishing. Is you're in contact as it
Mhm.
drops, but you don't impede the drop.
Right.
You follow the drop and keep tight. With braid, you do that.
Mhm.
And I just started fishing braid basically a year ago, maybe 2 years. Didn't prefer it for my clientele, so I didn't have it on a rod and say, "Oh no, you can't touch that one."
Right.
I didn't want to hear. I didn't want to hear that
Yeah.
crybaby stuff. So anyway, but yeah, it's all the difference in the world when you've got shallow water in the braid and you can feel every piece of blade of grass. But I prefer and teach the jig, the slow count, and the 16th because the average person will catch more fish with that 16th
Mhm.
because that many more fish will see it. 4 times the number of fish that are in the region are going to see it if you say 1, 2, 3, 4 versus 1.
Yeah.
Because your pop doesn't do you, it's not an advantage for you. You might as well take the cork off if you're going to let it drop that quick because that's the same drop you get without it.
So you'll like this because what you just said makes a lot of sense now, and I never thought about it that way. But there's times where I'm fishing around a lot of structure, rock, oyster mainly,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll have people just can't. All they do is every cast they're hanging it up.
Mm-hmm.
So I will put a light jig head on it, or I'll go to a rigging hook. But I usually put an 1/8 or a 16th ounce jig head, and I'll have them throw that.
Well, I'll go with the 5-inch over the sea shade when they're getting hung up too.
Mm-hmm.
It's more buoyant and it drops slower.
But I think the reason that they're catching that they start catching fish isn't so much that they're staying out of the rocks now. It's that, like what you just said,
It's
the
in the
bait
rock.
is working so much slower now.
Well, think of being in water this deep. If you look into that column of water, there isn't that much going on. It isn't like being out in 4 feet of water where there's a lot of whirl there. So that bait going slower gives them an opportunity to get a bite.
Mm-hmm.
Same number of fish, same aggression. It gives them an opportunity. But if I've got one, that if we're dumbing down, let's put the cork on there. We're going to try to advantage the client regardless of what the gear is.
I just teach.
I don't care.
And I just can't work them that slow. That's why I don't ever do
No,
it.
you just catch 3 or 4 fish and then they're all over you trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
I've watched you do that, so don't deny that one. But I'm not going to pick up a rod and compete with them as much as I'm going to teach. Yeah, I understand. You can, when you're losing your crew, you can pick up a rod and catch a fish. Unfortunately, when I do that, it's usually the biggest fish of the day because
always.
And the reason that happens is we are ultra concentrating because we're not planning to make but 3 or 4 casts.
Mhm.
And we wait till we're on a setup, whether it's a bank, rock, point,
Well-
whatever. And we got to make a fish happen. So boom, and then it turns out to be an overslot.
Yeah. And then how many times I've had clients, you don't realize it until they say something. You make 6 casts during the whole day and you catch a fish on every cast.
Right.
And they're like, well, you know, like, you know, but it's just that reason you're waiting. It's like they should have caught one. There should be a fish right there, and you know exactly how to present it and what to do.
The tide's right, the
Yes.
water's right,
And the fish is there. They're just not hitting
right.
it right.
Mullet are jumping everywhere, and they're wore out
They're
because
just missing
because the bite wasn't going on for 3 hours. So
Mhm.
at that point, you say bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
Yeah. Years ago, I had a guy, and he was probably late 30s, 6'6", and his grandfather, and we were throwing pinfish, and the the grandfather said, "Well, George," or whatever his name was, grandson says, he said, "What did you learn today?" He said, "Let him throw it." That's all he said. He didn't know my name. He didn't remember. He just said, "Let him throw
Let
it."
him throw it.
He said, "That's what I learned."
So you want to talk about the story here? Ricky Kern just commented. We were fishing the creek, I guess a couple winters ago, and I made the comment. I said, I think we can catch these fish on a bare hook. And I threw one out there. So Ricky, I'll put it up here on the screen. Ricky said, "I've watched Kenny catch fish on a bare hook. That just ain't right."
Yeah.
Well, the main thing about a jig head is to have confidence in the jig head you're throwing and understand what it's designed for. There's a lot of different head designs out there. They're the ones that want to stand up like a Ned rig situation. They're made on the East Coast, and there's some of them that are the lead is distributed too much on the bait, so it doesn't want to fall head first. There are all kinds of, but the basic flats, what used to be called a basic flats head jig, is hardly out there anymore. The gotchas is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, that was the same as the Tom Mann. Gotcha chased and copied Tom Mann's jig head. And I used those for years, and I wanted a white head with a pink eye. And I would outfish you. I don't care.
I like the old Cody jigs.
Yes, that was a good jig head. But if you find one that you have great confidence in, you know, and you've got it in different sizes, it doesn't mean that the other weight distribution, weight design will be as competitive and as popular for you. For example, the Pro Elite, I do better in shallow water with the Pro Elite head because it has that shovel.
Yeah, that's
It has-
my favorite head.
It'll slide,
Mhm.
and their regular jig head, the 33 Kings,
It's like-
doesn't
It's like a
slide.
shovel.
It'll hang. It'll hang. So as you're doing, you know, people get locked into simple or what their grandpa used to do, and they use a 1/4 ounce red jig head, and it's a basic gotcha brand. That gotcha head is the edge of it's like that coming against the water, and it's a hanging fool. But that Pro Elite, I like it in the 1/4 ounce, and I guess it's, I don't know.
Well, that's a good point. The jig head style you use can change the action. Will change the action of the bait.
100%.
Right.
You know, like I was talking about taking a Z-Man redfish eye jig head and putting it on a 5-inch assassin instead of having, you know, where you're jigging like this, all of a sudden it darts.
It's sideways. Yeah.
It walks the dog under the water.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you were using their 3-aught. I had one in the car. You know, the one on when we were on your boat, and I said, "There it is," and thought that was mine. You know, I got home, I took my shirt off, and you know what was in my shirt? The hook that I'd lost. I did wash and dry it, and it had a sea shed on it because I was seeing if that's the way you were talking about rigging it. But Assassin builds what is it, 1/8 ounce? Anyway, they got a 5-aught and a 3-aught.
Oh,
And
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
3-aught the 3-aught swim jig with the screw for the attachment, the screw on the front, spring, I should say, the spring on the
Yeah.
on the eye.
You're talking about keel weights,
The
right?
keel weight, yeah, but the keel weight, people think about that Gamakatsu that you know you can pull a damn truck with. The swim bait Assassin swim bait in the 3/0, the bottom of that thing is actually shaped like your spoon, like a
And it
Johnson
flutters.
spoon, and it does
It
this.
makes that the whole body of that
Yeah.
that bait. So
Rip.
Shimmer.
you remember I was telling you when I went to Louisiana last year, I was using the little boss a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and it would only work right with the 3/0 Assassin
Hook.
keel weighted hook,
Swim bait.
because literally that whole body does this.
Mm-hmm.
You got the tail moving, but you got the whole body shimmering.
Shaking.
And that little boss has a bunch of ribs on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when we got down there, you know how the water can get in Louisiana. Like it could be crystal clear and then like that.
Mud.
So it's nothing but mud. So then you get those ripples and you got that whole body doing this. I mean, it was just bam, bam, bam.
That's one of my favorite baits to use out there because it's got that big tail and just thumps. And they will track that thing like crazy.
Well, that jig head makes, after you told me that, I ran it on all three of them. The 5-inch bait, the Elite Shiner, and on the Sea Shed. And you're right, the whole thing is shaking.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of them has a different wallop because of the bait itself.
Yep.
But it makes a lot of difference in shallow water when that fish is getting that good a look at it. Or in the dirty water, as Kenny said, when they can't see it, the vibration's going to bring the bite.
Yep.
We used to turn a man's jig, the jelly, when Ed Chambers came out with Zoom U-tail worms. Y'all know what that is?
Yeah, those
The
curly tails.
U-tail came back. We would turn it down in the winter so the U-tail kicked the bottom and kicked up mud and clay, whatever bottom. And then we looked for mud where the shad were spawning because they were kicking up that water. And if you turned the tail this way, you couldn't catch a bass on it. They wouldn't hit it. And they were Carolina rigging it too. But we were dragging the worm as well as the lid itself. We used to turn the worm lid around backwards and bring the cup of the bullet lid
Mm-hmm.
and bring the cup to us in the winter because we were fishing super slow. You didn't get hung that bad.
Right.
And you were throwing that mud. That worked well in Ufall and West Point.
So something I know Greg was not a fan of, the DOA Terrorize. So back in the day, I would use those a lot, especially around EMC.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you hit those mud or near the mangroves.
Mhm.
The thing with those Terrorizes, they were real. They were
Weight
not really
forward.
nose heavy, but
Yeah.
they would lean forward,
Mm-hmm.
and I could slow roll those, and it would look like a little.
Crab digging or something.
Yep.
Crabs, what they thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the reason I didn't like it was because if the body got
the way you
tore up.
rigged them.
Yeah, it drove me crazy. If you tore the body up, you had to cut off, retie, and everything like that.
Yeah.
But
Little stuff like that, and that's the
no, yeah.
now.
They all have their place.
Instead of using that, you know, in the wintertime, I'll use a Ned rig where I'm just,
Mm-hmm.
you know, sometimes I'm not even working it. You can pitch it up on the edge of a creek and just feel it tumble down the.
Yeah. And the one thing, especially with redfish, trout are the same way. I've seen trout do it too. I've watched them in the wintertime when the water's clear. You'll see them, is that jig head especially. You throw it out there and you let it make that puff.
Mm-hmm.
And those fish, I mean, you can drag it or, you know, work it through the water column. They won't even mess with it. But you throw it out there and let it make bounce it a few times, get it to puff up that mud. And even now, those fish, they immediately come to it just to see what it is.
Well, right now the bulk of the trout and redfish are in mud and sand.
Mhm.
They're not as much in the grass.
No, not yet.
And like I said, right now still a good time to use a little P&V.
Mhm.
Perfect time to use a little P&V and bounce it in those sandy patches and the rock and the mud and like you said, make those little puffs.
Yeah, and for me, the redfish, it doesn't, obviously in the springtime, what happens? They group up a little more. They become a little more consistent. But even through summer and all that, it doesn't change much as to where I fish them. Especially on the high water. They're going to be in around some kind of rock, some kind of structure bottom. It's got a little bit of solidness to it and everything. And I mean, I catch redfish year round on jigs. It's
Right.
probably my favorite lure to use for them. You know, as far as consistency wise, I'd rather catch them on top water or something like that. But I mean, if I want to go and catch redfish in numbers, I'll usually always have a jig on.
Now for the next month, for the average fisherman, it's hard to beat a gold spoon.
Yeah, and you can say that. Yeah, 100%.
It's hard to mess it up.
That's easy to use.
But you use the Aqua Dream.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mike Hackler's Aqua Dream spoon,
Yes.
which
And
is different,
just straight reel it.
which is different than the Johnson
Johnson,
Gold Weedus.
yeah.
Or
The Johnson, you're going to have to work different than.
Yeah, I always twitch the Johnsons. I've always to make them kind of flutter a little bit, but like you said, the Aqua Dream, you just put the tip up and just reel it
Reel.
easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I use those so much. To be honest, I'd rather use a Johnson because the hooks don't come off, the hooks don't break. And it's not that it's the problem
They
with
come unscrewed.
the best thing you can do is first thing when you get it, take that screw out, take that weed guard, throw the weed guard away, put some Loctite on it.
Yep.
Because what ends up happening, that weed guard comes off, and now your screw comes loose and starts backing up.
Yeah. Yep. I've noticed that on a few of them. And I've had fish on, all of a sudden they come off and you get back and you got no hook. You're like, oh, that's no good. I don't even know if he sells just the hooks because they got probably sells he okay.
But I never buy them.
Yeah, I've got about 5 or 6 of them in there without hooks on them now. I need to put new ones on. But all of them I get now, I do exactly what you say. Take them off, put a little bit Loctite on, and screw them back in.
And I've gotten to where I just take the weed guard off.
Yeah. I put it off for the most part.
You really don't need it.
No. I don't think it does much. So,
We know what Pat's going to be doing. Pinfish under pocket work.
I hadn't even bought any gizzards yet. So get
It's coming. It's coming though.
Sure it is. Sure it is. I got a lot of clients that want to watch that cork go in there. I like to watch that cork.
yeah, there's something about
I'd rather throw a spook all day long, but my arm doesn't want to do that anymore.
we caught a couple AJ size pinfish today. So there's some big ones around. I just didn't see like I said, the schools
AJ.
amberjet.
The type
They-
of the size pinfish you
Yeah,
go to,
they're like that big.
Oh,
where they're actually eating the hook of the plug.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, they were big pinfish. They weren't redfish size or trout size, that's for sure.
Reagan Fox called those racehorses.
We are seeing a lot of big schools of Pat's fish. Big schools of hardhead catfish.
Oh.
Oh wait, I'm sorry, Joel's fish.
Hey, I don't know why you were telling me, but I don't catch hardhead.
Joel down.
Seal cats, yeah.
They're-
We're going to catch our share of those probably, but
I've
they're
seen a
not
few
near as
schools.
bad as they used to be,
Well, those are good to eat.
according to some people.
Yeah, I'll take their word for it. I did eat them once out in Louisiana, unbeknownst to me, and it was good. But I've said it 100 times. I could never get by the slime trying to clean one. Just
Oh, I didn't want to smell the ammonia.
yeah,
It
that's
just looks like the coagulation off of a can of sausages.
yeah. Another thing I will never eat in my life.
That's something I don't eat either. The Vienna sausage. I'm not even going to open the can.
Nope.
But
My grandfather used to eat them religiously when we were on the boat, and man, he'd open them things up, and I'd smell them. And
I don't eat beanie weenies, and I don't eat Vienna sausage. Of course, my list is as long as my arm of things I can't eat, so that's all right.
I'm okay
Yeah,
with beanie weenies.
The well, you probably if you eat a beanie weenie, you might eat an anchovy.
No,
Okay.
no,
Only on pizza.
no. not
I
even
remember
on
going to Epcot Center back when I drank beer, and with my buddy I graduated from University of South Florida, and we went to the sushi bar in Epcot Center, and somebody said something about, no, Lori ordered squid, and they put it down as they were going around the table. Either the table rotated like a train car or whatever, something strange, and this stuff came by. I looked at John and said, I said, bait. And he goes, He said, what's bait troll? Bait troll, the name of the bait? What's the
Oh,
little
the
yellow?
bucket?
Light? Yeah, what's it called?
Yeah,
Minotroll?
yeah,
Yeah.
Bait troll? Whatever. He said,
yeah.
flow troll. He said,
Flow troll.
flow troll. And I went, I almost threw up. It was like, oh no. Yeah, he said flow troll. And I went, and I've been drinking a good bit, you know. And Lori said, y'all shut up.
Yeah,
So she said,
we need to
she said-
leave.
She said, y'all shut up. Some people enjoy calamari. And I said, you can call it calamari.
It's still squid.
Still bait.
I like it. I like squids.
I can't
I like it fried, but
can't get past how much I've used for bait offshore. But there again,
So we have some stuff coming up.
yes,
You want to talk about it?
yes, we are going to do some seminars, the three of us, and we're starting off our 226 season of seminar at Wilson's Bait and Tackle on April the 10th, which is a Friday evening. Now, Wilson's closes at 6, and we're going to probably start as close to that as we can once we get folks there. We hope they'll be showing up before
Wait a minute.
their closing, and we're going to talk about trout, redfish, and fishing in general, and probably field questions. I usually start a seminar with, well, what would y'all like to hear?
Mhm.
So don't come to the seminar not planning to ask a question. Think of your question that you'd most like answered, whether it's something that you have a hard time with or don't know anything about. And bring it to the seminar at Wilson's Bait and Tackle in Perry, Florida, April the 10th, which is a Friday, and 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. We'll be running some notices online as well as at Wilson's itself. We'll have some flyers out later this week. So we hope y'all will come, and
I may have I just realized I may have a conflict that weekend, but anyways, we'll work it out.
all right.
that's where we're at for now.
Yeah,
And
but we have them coming.
Yeah, and then we're gonna be doing a few other ones that we'll announce later up through South Georgia and everything. So we just got to finalize dates on them and everything.
yeah, we plan to be at Trophy Creek up there in Monticello, and we will probably be,
Adel
The
Outfitters.
Dale Outfitters
Yeah,
and
and-
gonna have us.
I think we're probably looking at May May there.
so, but we look forward to seeing you at the seminar. Is that all you got tonight?
That's all I have. You have anything to add?
Not really. I mean, just as we finally get out of winter here again, our second little winter. It's. I know we said it last time because we were just ahead of the cold front, but it had really started to go, and this put the brakes on it. But we're really close to just having the fishing that we all are looking forward to, and the reason everybody comes down here to fish. I mean, it's never easy. There's some days it's easier than others, but it's going to get to the point where it's, you can go out there, and if you do and get the weather and hit where you're supposed to hit, you're going to probably catch fish. Those months are coming.
Well, it's like I told my client from Tuesday that we canceled. I said, the only thing I like better than fishing is getting paid to do it. And I said, so I hate making this call.
Yeah.
So canceling this week, I canceled the ones I had, and we all lost some trips this week. But now is the time to call us to set your trips up in April. You don't want to be disappointed, especially if you're weekend only. If you have a job for a living like most people and you want to fish weekends, they're starting to cover up on all three of us. So y'all get on the phone or text and let us get you a schedule and get you on the book.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. It's been pretty slow,
It has.
but my phone has been nonstop this past week.
Yeah. It always takes warming up in the north before the phone starts ringing really good, it seems like.
Yeah, and Brandy will tell you I'm already starting to book stuff for December, January.
Well, everybody wants to get back for the airport.
Well, but I'm just saying, it's getting the bus. It's
Think
about
ahead.
the bus wide open.
Yeah.
I've got four messages today that I got to return calls. Them they're ready to come.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Another thing you need to really this time of year, and a lot of people don't, I was actually joking about it with a client that we wound up canceling Monday and Tuesday, is when we do get these little fronts that come through, be very wary because there's a big pressure gradient this time of year between the cold air and the warm air, and you get some really, really savage weather. I was joking with my client that I don't care what the wind speed is, as long as it's out of the south this time of year, I'll fishing 50-mile-an-hour winds, and lo and behold, Shannon sent a text that it blew 50 on Monday. So I wouldn't want to be out there, but you have to be careful because those kind of things can sneak up on you this time of year that we don't get, the other
Normal.
times a year.
Not normal.
Oh,
Yeah.
some of our best days of fishing, Brandy and I, is when we go out when people cancel because
Yeah.
of the wind, and we'll go out there in a 30-mile-an-hour wind, and
Yeah.
we will just hammer the
Yeah.
fish.
Yeah, a hard southwest wind it's like an igniter for them. I mean, it really makes a difference. You have to be careful. I mean,
Oh yeah.
30-mile-an-hour winds are nothing to play with, even in 3 foot of water.
Right.
I mean,
Now, don't get me wrong. We were the whole time we ran on the shoreline.
Oh, yeah.
We fished
without
on
a
the
doubt.
shoreline.
Yeah.
We'll find some areas where we can tuck away and get a break from the wind.
Yeah.
And guess where the fish are?
Yeah, they're doing the same thing. And the difference, I mean, we're, all of us have been on the water in those conditions and probably a lot worse. You get somebody that comes down for the weekend and says, shoot, I'm going to go because I'm here. You have to be careful.
Yeah.
Those conditions create it's a whole new animal out there.
Well, it also it also is a greatly you fish in different places. You fish as clear water down here when it's blowing 25 knots. You go up even as far as Yates, and the fish can't find your bait. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to know what you're doing in regards to where you should be fishing and which setups to select. And I've always loved it. WIND, I love it.
Yeah.
But caught some of the biggest stringers of fish ever in 20 plus knots, and quickly. Sometimes it takes each cast. It's just like bang, 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 and it's over. As far as your keeping. But it's extraordinary fishing, and I love it when it's blowing.
One thing I want to add was going into spring, bait starts coming in, fish starts coming in, sharks start coming in. Don't just reach down there and grab that leader and go to flip a fish in the boat.
Yep. Look around.
Because I can't tell you how many times, especially in the spring, where I'll grab a leader and go to pick it up, and a shark grabbed that fish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Some people doesn't think about, but
Well, the other thing is, I'm not going to do is put my hand in the water. I caught a 39-inch redfish about 3 weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I put him back in the net and took that net and got his head up, got him up right, and held his mouth open and let the boat idle. And I was by myself, but I have that net there. I'm not going to put my hands in the water on a fish that I've just spent, say, 10, 15, 20 minutes fighting. Everything in the area knows that I have that fish on, and nobody's thinking about that. The average person doesn't think about the fact that that shark knows where that fish is now, and he's waiting for it. And
there's a great white right down off Newport Richie right now.
so let's hit some questions before we go. We're kind of wrapping it up here.
Mhm.
Ricky Kern says, anybody using top water yet? We did touch on that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
coming. It's coming.
we want to hold 70 degrees overnight for a week. If it's 70 when you put the boat in every for a solid week, it's on though.
Clean them up and sharpen the hooks for the next couple days, and they'll be ready in another week or so.
And then he asked about shrimp. We're phasing out of the shrimp. Just
Yeah.
there's too many pinfish already on the flats.
Yeah, I mean the reason we had them today, we had a boat full of kids, both of us. So
Little kids.
it makes it much easier to for them.
And in that wind, about all we could do is just
Yeah.
anchor down.
Anchor down. Yep.
Stephen Cooper says, think they will bite over the weekend. I think it's still going to be slower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Sunday's going to be your better day.
Sunday evening, Sunday afternoon.
Yep.
It'll start.
Brad Lee says next week they will be back on. Absolutely correct.
Yep.
Ricky Kern, win not king. Bill Brown says, love fishing with Greg. Always a great time, but sadly he uses me for bait.
I use them to scout with.
And we have a question from Christopher Such, says, what do you all think about adding a spinner to plastics?
So I was never a big fan of that. However, I've had a couple clients that have fished with me and started doing that. Now down,
The underspin?
yeah, down where I'm from and have grown up fishing, for a lot of years, it didn't make much of a difference and it didn't seem to work. Up here, the way I always equate that is anywhere that a spoon works really good, that bait works really good. It takes a jig and you can almost turn it into a spinner bait. You can reel it, you can work it slower. I very rarely jig them when I'm doing that. I use them more like Pat was using that chatterbait the other day. It's just a steady reel and get that thing. And again, like he was saying, you can let it drop down and just kick the mud. You can do the same thing with a spinner. So there are times I like them. I don't know that I use them that much in the spring. I use them more in the fall. When
I'm not gonna lie, I don't use them.
yeah, I do have them in my boat, and it's one of those things that I very rarely go to start with. But if it's a tough day, I'll throw anything to try and get a bite.
I mean, the last redfish tournament, I threw everything in the tackle box,
Well,
including the tackle box.
well, if we're talking about a underspin jig, that's a jig and they pour the swivel in the bottom of it, pointing straight down, and then put a small willow leaf on there. You're basically mixing apples and oranges, and I'm going to say why. Your jig that this man's throwing in less than 2 feet of water is not a fish; it's a shrimp. It's an imitation of a shrimp. When we use the word artificials terribly, there's no such thing as artificials. There's artificial bugs, artificial worms, artificial lizards, artificial shad, artificial something. So what we're saying is people forget what is the something that we're imitating. And we're imitating with an artificial shrimp, which is a jig. If you put a blade on it, it becomes a fish. So you got to make up your mind. And there's no reason to do both when what the blade's going to do is attract the wrong type of creature. The flash of any bait, I could say you take a redfish magic in 3 and 4 feet of water, you lose it real quick. The mackerel come and get it, the blues come and get it, and the shark comes and gets it. All those immature fish or toothed critters are going to get it. So save that for crappie fishing. You underspin. The crappie'd love to have that little willow blade on there. I've thrown maybe 10 times in my life that underspin. Didn't do anything, but I caught hundreds, if not a couple of thousand of fish on Little George, which is a whole different lure. We used it as a shad imitation when the shad were in the channels of the creeks. But that said, the inline spinnerbait will catch fish. If you want to throw it, just buy one of those.
Yep. I was gonna say there's so many baits that do what that bait does better. Your spoon, inline spinner, just a regular spinner bait. The Hildebrand makes a saltwater spinner bait.
Right. The inline, and then you've got the jig spinners, which are the beetle spin modifications, which is Water Redfish Magic, and the thunder spin that Cajun Thunder used to build. Those, though, are really redfish tools. They're not quote unquote trout tools. We built a large one we call Cajun Flash. I caught some big trout on it and some big reds. It doesn't catch underslot fish, though. It just catches overslot fish. People just wouldn't slow down and fish it properly. But it had a 5/0, almost 3 3/4 inch blade on it. But like I said, I wouldn't mix the two together. I would throw one or the other, but not both for trout, because you're imitating shrimp if you have a jig or a soft plastic on it.
Like I said, redfish, I'll use it just like a spoon almost. I'll have somebody that I just put them on there to try something different. Sometimes a fish sees something it doesn't normally see, they'll eat it.
I just cranked to move the boat.
On that note, let's move the boat on out of here, and
All
we'll be back next week.
Yes.
Yep, that's it next week.
All righty. Well, we will see y'all then.
Good night.